The Wilhelm scream? Really? Okay, so I just finished watching Hulu's latest movie, Prey, which is a sequel, but apparently, well, not really. It's a sequel technically, but it's a prequel to the Predator series. Now, there has been a ton of love for this movie, and I have to say I enjoyed it. However, I'm not as in love with it as a lot of the people that I've been seeing on social media seem to be, and there's a few reasons why that started to get under my skin a little bit and irk me. Get under my skin, irk me, same thing, whatever. But let's just talk first about some of the cool things about this movie, because there's quite a few cool things about it. Well, one thing, this isn't really talking about a cool thing about, well, sort of it is. I feel like this film should have been given a theatrical release. I'm not sure why it wasn't. It went straight to Hulu. Like I mentioned, I think this would be pretty cool to watch on the big screen. So that's kind of a pro about the film. But also just because of the type of film it is, action / horror thriller sort of stuff. The cinematography was looked really good in a lot of different scenes. The fight choreography, the Predator was freaking badass and cool, even though he was wicked. But those things I think would have translated very, very well on the big screen. So unfortunately, we don't have that. I wish we had. The film isn't overly long. It's about an hour and 40 minutes, and I feel like the time was utilized pretty well. We don't get too bogged down, but at the same time, we don't jump right into the action with the Predator right away. I mean, it's at least maybe 40 minutes before there is a direct interaction between the Predator and the humans in this story. And so I like that. I like that it took its time. I mean, you do see it here and there every once in a while, but it's just not kind of like with the first movie. It builds up to that, right? There's this other stuff that's going on, and then the Predator makes his appearance. So I like that they gave the characters a chance to breathe, to get to know the characters some, to get to know the main character. Gosh, what the heck was her name again? Naru or something? Oh my gosh. And I had just looked it up too, right before I started filming this. But we get to know her character. And so there's some things that I wanted to mention specifically about. I remember when this movie was, like when the trailer came out and people were complaining, because, oh, this is like woke or whatever. And how, because she's a girl, how in the world, there's no way, how can she take on this tiny little girl, and how can she take on this big predator, and all this, and I get those complaints to a certain point, but we have to remember that even in the first Predator and pretty much all the Predator movies, whenever someone defeats the Predator, it's not because of brute force. They have to use their head, their brain, their thinking. They have to figure out a way to defeat it, because nobody is strong enough to defeat this creature. Nobody. Not even a bear. So there's no way a human's going to be able to do that. So the humans defeat it through ingenuity, weaponry, whatever, how they figure out how to use the weapons that they have at their disposal, or weapons that they make. So that whole thing about, oh, it's a girl and she shouldn't be going, to me, that's not really, on the face of it, is not really, I think, a complaint that probably could even be made when it comes to this type of film. However, there are certain scenes in here that made me kind of roll my eyes, because it's like, oh, okay, really? Like, none of these people fighting against this predator with the weapons they have, and even with whatever their own fighting skills, but she's the one. Yeah, I mean, and also like her taking on handfuls of people and beating them up, not necessarily with sheer force, but with her weaponry and her fighting, but still, it doesn't matter how good of a fighter you are, she's still a woman. And there's a scene where there's a bunch of people against her and she manages to defeat them all. Yes, this is going to be a tad spoilery. So stuff like that really that stretches me to the limit a bit, because I think they could have done without scenes like that. Yeah, I could see her maybe taking out a guy or two, but like 4 or 5, and it just, I don't like when they set up those sorts of things. She's badass, but she's not that badass. And also something though that I did appreciate at the beginning is, you know, she wants to be this hunter or whatever. And of course that's not her place, because typically that was not the place of women in the Comanche society. The women went out and did the gathering and all this stuff and preparing, you know, food and this and this and that. They weren't really the warriors. She didn't necessarily want to be a warrior. She wants to be a hunter, okay? What kind of classify this? Almost like a warrior, but not really. Anyway, she wants to be a hunter. But something that I did appreciate is that in the beginning, they do make an effort to show her fail, and she fails a lot. She's not that great of a hunter. She screws up. She can't do it. Her brother ends up being successful. She may have good ideas about what to do, but she just doesn't necessarily have the skills to carry them off. And so I appreciate that they did that. But then I felt like in other aspects, they kind of just went a little bit overboard to show, oh, she can do all this and she's, you know, blah, blah, blah. And that sort of started to wear thin with me. Also, something that another issue I have with it, I'm looking at Rotten Tomatoes and well, this is not really an issue with the film. This is not about the film. This is about some of the critique of the film. I feel like people are, especially like, let's say, official critics, I feel like they're super in love with it for a specific reason, because she's a woman, she's an Indian / Native American, whatever, and it's a Predator film, and so because she's the heroine and because of her ethnicity, that's a big, huge deal. And I feel like that's kind of a driving force behind the love for this film. Also, for the fact that it's pretty solid, but I feel like there's just too much of an abundance of love for this thing, and it's sort of overlooking some of the problems with it, which I'll get into as I continue sort of blathering on about this. So, and the critic reviews are like in the high, well, they've come down some. I think they're maybe 92 now. And people are making, when I say people, I mean in like, you know, articles and stuff like that. I've seen articles about this. Oh, it's higher rated than the first Predator. It's even better than the original. No, it's not. It's good. It's quite good. It might be one of the better sequels. I agree with that. But it's not better than the original. One of the reasons that I think the critic scores are so high is because, well, I was analyzing how many scores there were on Rotten Tomatoes. There's like 55 for the first Predator, and there's 150 plus, almost 160 for this one. So there's a crap ton more reviews. So yes, the statistically, the percentage of positives, it's higher. The audience scores are not higher, and they're going to continue to go lower, I think, as more people watch it. Not because I think people are going to hate it, because I really don't think this is a film to hate. I think it's pretty decent. I just don't think it's as magnificent as we're being told it is. That's the issue I have with it. The audience scores for the original Predator are higher than the audience scores for this one. Right now, I think it sits at 83%. The original Predator is 87%. I think this is going to come down into the 70s as more people kind of watch it with a bit of a critical eye, more than some people are now. Maybe upon second viewings, people will be like, I don't know. Yeah, I see this and this and this, and this is an issue, and this writing. But anyway, so I feel like I'm ranty more, and maybe that's because as the movie went on, I started to pick up on things that did get under my skin, especially because I'm thinking in my head how much love this movie's getting, and I'm expecting it to be up to this level that I'm thinking it should be, and it wasn't. Okay, one of the complaints I have about this movie is, why the heck was it in English? I heard that they had filmed a whole other Comanche language version of this, and then I found out later, no, it was a dub. This should not have been in English. Not primarily in English, because why are they going to talk English to each other? They have Comanche language interspersed throughout, but they're primarily speaking English to each other. And in the subtitles, it says English, and then it says what they're saying. And then there's other people she interacts with. I think it's a Frenchman, like some French trappers, hunters, whatever. And they're speaking French. We get no translation for what they're saying when they speak French, but then sometimes they'll speak English to her and she's speaking English back. Those, I think, were probably the only times they really should have had this have any English in here. It just didn't ring true to me. I get why they did it. You know, a lot of people do prefer to watch movies in their native tongue. I do as well, but I think if they hadn't done stuff like, you know, English and then the line, I don't know, that just kind of stuck in my craw a little bit. It takes you out of it kind of pulls you out of the moment, if that makes any sense. And don't get me wrong, I prefer to watch movies in English, I do, but just for the immersion aspect, it made no sense that they did what they did. And I think it would have still gone over just fine if it had been Comanche language and we had to read the subtitles. Honestly, I think that would have been okay, because fans of Predator would still watch it. It wouldn't matter to them. Anyway, so there's that. Also, as I mentioned before, like, there's a scene where she's fighting more than a handful of trappers. She's somehow able to very successfully bring them down, not necessarily with brute force, but with her fighting skill, but whatever. It still seems really more than a little bit ludicrous to me that not one of them could have shot her or hit her with the hatchet or whatever. Not one of them, you know. It's like stuff like that got under my skin. And then there's also a part in here where she's at this place, someone silently, or has apparently silently approached, but this person is only on one leg, they're injured, there's no way they could have made a silent approach like that and startled her. That sort of stuff. Also, there's something else where, I got this list of things. Something else where, so you know how the Predator can only see you through your body heat. So she figures this out. But the way she figures it out makes no sense, because there's a person that's injured. He poses no threat. He's pretending to be dead, but it doesn't matter. Even if the Predator could sense his body heat, he wouldn't do anything to him because the guy is posing no threat. She's already figured out that the Predator won't attack you if they perceive you as not being a threat, because this happened to her. She had a contact with the Predator before. So this flash forward to this particular scene where she figures out, oh, the Predator, he can't see you if you're cold. Basically, if your body temperature is cold. There was a reason why this character's body temperature was cold, but it made no sense for her to figure that out because he already wasn't a threat. So whether his body temperature was cold or not, he wouldn't have done anything to this guy because he was injured and he was just lying there not doing anything. So you see, like, this is when it started to, like, there were other things leading up to that, but when that happened, I'm like, wait. The writing in this is not as clever as it thinks it is. That part made no sense. Now, I get that she needs to figure this out. I get all that. But the way they got her there, it didn't work for me at all. So that kind of aggravated me. And also, like I said, while defeating the Predator doesn't take brute force. There are still plenty of instances where when she is tangling with the predator, force is involved and the predator still doesn't kill her, which it was killing everybody else. Even when sometimes when they weren't even physically engaged in action, you know, like maybe they had been and there's a standoff and he'll kill them, whatever. So it just felt like the way he was fighting with her was different than how he was fighting with other people. And of course, we get she has to survive because she's going to have the showdown with him at the end. But again, that inconsistency, that bothered me. So it's things like that that just kind of pulled me away from the edge of thinking it's just absolutely wonderful. And it started to annoy me a bit because I was wondering why other people didn't seem to be picking up on this. And by other people, I am specifically referring to the critics, because I can see that the audience scores are reflecting, I believe, a little bit more reality when it comes to this movie. Also, the Wilhelm scream, come on, this is supposed to be a serious horror thriller, and the Wilhelm scream has been so overused that when it happens, it just snaps me right out of any tension or any sort of moment that's happening. I don't think they should have put that in there. I'm feeling really pissy about this film, and I don't want it to sound like I hated it, because I didn't hate it. I'm just annoyed it's not as good as it should have been. Based on all the love, that just is really, it's just rubbing me wrong. There were some funny moments in here. Well, there was one laugh out loud moment, a kill moment. I thought it was pretty funny when it happened, but I think you'll know it when you get to it. Anyway, I have kind of rambled, but this has been more of a complaint session than anything else. But I still would suggest that you check this movie out. I think for the most part, you will like it. You might maybe notice those same things I did, and maybe you won't, or maybe even if you notice them, they won't bother you as much as they bothered me. But I think for me, I think I went into it with too much expectation. I think if I hadn't heard what everybody was thinking. See, this is one of the reasons why I don't necessarily like to know what reviews are or what people think about a film. Sometimes it works and it gets me excited and I go into it and I really enjoy it. But then sometimes I feel like I get a bit overhyped for it. And then I go into it and I start nitpicking and seeing things that shouldn't be there if this movie is supposed to be as excellent as people said it was. Also, another thing, getting back to what people were talking about, you know, the wokeness and the fact that she's a girl and all that stuff. While on its face, that really shouldn't be any sort of an issue, because like I said, the whole brute force thing, that's not what it takes to defeat the predator. I do, and also getting back to why I think the critics are fundamentally as in love with this as they are, is because of, you know, the boxes that it ticks. But the whole thing about she's this girl, she wants to be this hunter, you know, oh, no. That same thing. She's got to prove to the guys that she can do it. And this, now 20, 30 years ago, that would have been like, okay. But now when these sorts of storylines happen, I'm just like, oh, this is so contrived. This is so agenda driven. This narrative about the strong, empowered woman. You know, I'm feeling like with these sorts of stories now in today's setting, it's done more with this sort of, you know, let's have this agenda, this narrative we're going to prop up and, you know, push in your faces and all this, you know, the girl's the best, the guys are the losers, you know, that sort of thing. Well, the guys were pretty badass in here, especially her brother was cool, and in a lot of ways it was some of the stuff that was done before she had her final face off. If it hadn't been done by the people before her, you know, like maybe well, she probably wouldn't have been successful. So it wasn't totally on her own, if you want to look at it that way as well. But still, just because of the way things are today with a lot of writing in Hollywood and entertainment industry, I'm not digging these types of formulas. So it did have that going against it for me because of what's going on nowadays. Like I said, 20, 30 years ago, not so much. But I did go into this with an open mind, and I did appreciate in the beginning, like I said, how they showed that she sucked. She failed. She couldn't do the stuff she was trying to do with the hunting. She did get her ass kicked sometimes by her fellow Comanche people because of stuff that was happening, and they beat her up, and so I was like, okay, well, that's good, but it's just interesting to me that they beat her up, but she could beat up all these other guys somewhere. I don't know. It's just, like I said, those inconsistencies there, those issues just annoyed me. Maybe with the passage of time and I rewatch it, maybe it won't irk me as much, but I feel like it probably always will because these things just really stuck out at me. The stuff that I'm complaining about to you now, it's stuff that stuck out at me. But in general, I don't regret watching this, and I do suggest you watch it. As much as it sounds like I'm absolutely hating on this movie, I do recommend checking it out for yourself for sure. Like I say, I don't like to be influenced by what people think, and here I am influencing you by giving you my thoughts, but you kind of know that coming to watch a review. So just like I knew that watching reviews too before I headed into this, but I think that it worked. I think that had a negative impact, unfortunately, with this film. But I don't know, maybe it didn't. Maybe I would have picked up on all this stuff, even if I hadn't. But anyway, I think that's everything. Looking through the stuff that I wrote down. But yeah, so probably one of my favorite parts of this movie, one of my favorite things about this movie was the Predator itself. His design and his face, he looks different than the Arnie Predator. Not quite as polished, because you have to remember this is a few hundred years before the first Predator takes place. It takes place in the 1700s. So this Predator, maybe the Predators aren't quite as adept as they ended up being when they started coming in the 1980s, with Arnold or whatever. But I think it had been established that they had already come before. So anyway, this one's different. I mean, he's got all this technology and he's an awesome fighter, but his machinery, no, forget that. Scratch that, really. His machinery's pretty cool. I mean, look at that shield he uses. And he does have this weaponry that's different. This projectile type weaponry that he uses in bombs and stuff like that. So I guess it's a mistake for me to say that maybe he's not like these Predators from the 1700s aren't as advanced or whatever as the ones from the 1980s, but I don't think so. I don't think so. But he was cool. I mean, I liked whoever played his part did it really well because he's badass. He's cool. The way he fought. I know the cinematography had a lot to do with that, and the cinematography was really good. I did like that, especially during fight scenes. It was really awesome. Those particular moments, I enjoyed that. Probably that was like the best part of it was like the action scenes and the way the fight scenes were carried out, and cinematography and the score. And you can just tell by some of these pictures too. It's pretty cool. Anyway, yeah. At least I'm ending it on a high note and I'm not just totally bitching about it the whole time. Oh. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap this up. I sort of had a plan, but I kind of just went all over the place. At any rate, I have gone over everything I meant to talk about, and curious to hear your thoughts whenever you get around to checking it out. If you feel like it is as good as the first or better. I don't feel like it's as good as, definitely not better, but it's pretty doggone solid for one of the sequels. I will agree with that. probably something I would not mind rewatching. I think I'll probably watch this with my son, maybe my brother too, when he's coming into town. So maybe he'd like to watch it as well. Curious to see if he points out the same things that I did. We kind of think alike on stuff like this, so it'll be interesting to see if he notices. All right, well, that's it. Wrapping it up. We'll see you guys later. Adios.